Good afternoon, Nubian gods and goddesses. I am going to finish this section called The Significance of Skin Color in Human Relations by Kenneth J. Gergen. He was getting started talking about the semantic value and what feelings do various colors communicate. Some have argued that the connotative meanings of various colors are related to innate physiological structure. So the question is saying, how do colors come to have this semantic value, and what feelings do various colors communicate? For example, certain colors stimulate a greater number of receptor cells in the retina of the eye and thus in the central nervous system. These same colors absorb less heat and may therefore be cooler to the touch. While this notion may account for certain reactions to color brightness and saturation, it does not account for the many differences produced by the all important dimension of hue. Nor does this theory explain the range of different emotions that may be elicited by the same color over time. A more reasonable explanation may be derived from principles of associative learning. Within this latter framework, certain environmental events are observed to possess the inherent capacity to produce various emotions. A full stomach may provide the newborn child with a pleasurable sensation, while a loud and unexpected noise may produce fear. Various aspects of the environment to which the initial response has been neutral may come to be associated with these more basic forms of arousal. If a mother's caress has been associated with physical satisfaction, her presence on subsequent occasions may be sufficient to elicit some form of pleasure. While colors may initially be effectively neutral for the developing child, they are constant aspects of his environment. If a given color is usually present when the child is frightened or sad, through processes of associative learning, such a color may come to elicit such feelings at later points in time. These associations may develop prior to linguistic abilities. Unless extinguished, they may continue through the individual's life. While the learning hypothesis may largely account for the emotional or connotative significance of various colors, the question of what colors communicate remains at bay. This this issue also presents an intriguing enigma. Not only do different colors register differentially on a symbolic level, but the emotional significance of certain colors may be common both within and even across cultural boundaries. If indeed primary reactions to colors are learned, it is a matter of some amazement that peoples with highly dissimilar cultural backgrounds should react similarly to a given color. After careful study of color symbolism in the Western tradition, Matthew Lakish lists the following as most commonly associated with black. And those colors, those the what is most commonly associated with black is woe, gloom, darkness, dread, death, terror, horror, wickedness, curse, mourning, and mortification. Walter Sargent adds to this list the attributes of defilement, error, annihilation, strength, and deep quiet. From his studies, Faber-Byrne concludes that despair is the major association elicited by black. Such attributes stand in marked contrast to those associated with white, which is triumph, light, innocence, joy, divine power, purity, regeneration, happiness, gaiety, peace, chastity, truth, modesty, femininity, and delicacy. Studies of color symbolism in the Bible, the works of Chaucer, Milton, Shakespeare, Hawthorne, Poe, and Melville also reveal a major tendency to use white in expressing forms of goodness and black in connotating evil. In terms of the above discussion of connotative meaning, it might be said that white tends to elicit a positive, evaluative reaction and black a negative one. Several direct and well-controlled tests of this relationship have been made within Western culture. All convincingly demonstrate the differential evaluative reaction to black versus white. One of the more outstanding of these studies demonstrated not only that white is rated more positively than black, but that Negroes as well as whites feel similarly in this regard, though whites are more extreme in their differential evaluation of the colors. Furthermore, black is rated by both racial groups as more potent but less active than white. These latter findings are particularly intriguing inasmuch as they coincide with the popular Western stereotype that Negroes are strong but lazy. While the homogeneity of meaning within the Caucasian dominated culture of the West is impressive, the possibility that color symbolism may be common across cultural boundaries is even more challenging. The evidence in this case is, of course, much more sparse, and one must be tentative. A systematic examination of a randomly selected group of cultures does reveal, however, many interesting observations. For the Cheyenne, a Sino-Tibetan border people, a sacred white stone is a leading feature of worship. The anthropologist studying this culture notes the people's basic tendency to equate white with goodness and blackness with evil. Among the Mongol descendants of the Mongols, black is the color of mourning, and white betokens good fortune. The Chukchis of Siberia utilize black to symbolize the Kilets, or evil spirits. Germain Dieterlen has observed that for the Bambara, a West African Negro tribe, white is used to symbolize wisdom and purity of the spirit. A piece of white cloth is sometimes hung over the door of a home where the inhabitants have just made a sacrifice. White is also the regal color. The dark tones of indigo, on the other hand, connote obscenity, impurity, and sadness. Black is also identified with the North and the rainy season. Similarly, Negroes of northern Rhodesia are observed to associate good luck with cleanliness and whiteness. A hunter smears a white substance on his forehead to invoke the powers of fortune. A person who has met with disaster is said to be black on the forehead. In Nigeria, the Nupe tribe represents bleak or frightening prospects, sorcery, or evil by black, while white implies luck and good prospects. The Yorubas, also on Nigeria, wear white when worshiping, as they believe the deities prefer white. Among the Creek Indians of North America, white betokens virtue and age, and black implies death. Although the present examination did reveal irregularities, these were extremely few and limited largely to instances in which white was associated with funeral rites. In short, the major volume of the evidence suggests widespread communality in feelings about black and white. This is deep. Before the significance of these findings for human relationships can be examined, the apparent existence of communality must be reconciled with the theory of color learning developed above. If the connotative meanings of colors are primarily learned, why is there not dramatic variability in the emotional impact of various colors from one culture context to another? One clear reason for uniformity in association obviously derives from cultural diffusion. Meanings common within a culture may be passed on to others as a simple result of cross-cultural interaction. Such an explanation would not, however, account for the germination of such associations or for their common existence in somewhat isolated areas of the world. More compelling is the possibility that the emotional response to at least the experience of black and white is established at a very early age and as a result of almost universal experiences. Two such experiences seem especially germane: the meaning of night versus day for the child and the training he receives in cleanliness. Night is often a period in which the child is in isolation, without comfort or bodily gratification. Moreover, night is a perfect screen on which he can project his worst fears. Any phantom, no matter how formidable, can exist within the amorphous cover of blackness. In Wallace Stevens' poem, Dominion of Black, one finds the following reaction to chaos and disorder. I saw the night come striding like the color of the heavy hemlocks. I felt afraid. With the coming of daylight, family and environment are again visibly present and sustenance and touch available. It is also much more difficult to project one's fears onto the compelling properties of visually apparent objects. John Dollard and Neil Miller have perhaps best outlined the profound significance of cleanliness training in the life of the child. It is unnecessary to review the details of their arguments to appreciate that for most children, immersion in dirt or other dark substances is ultimately reprehensible, and unsoiled skin rewarded. Are the basic emotional reactions triggered by various colors generalized to the domain of social interaction? Will, for example, the person whose emotional reaction to black is negative also feel antipathy for people whose skins are dark? In theory, such a possibility is highly plausible, and research has shown that emotions generated by color can be generalized to objects continuously paired with color. But when one turns to the factual domain, the evidence is far from conclusive. The existence of anti Negro sentiments among whites is subject to a host of explanations that do not involve color experience. More compelling and yet unsettling are incidents in which Negroes themselves seem negatively predisposed toward those among them with dark skin. Some of the most dramatic cases of this kind are found in the literature on mental illness among Negroes. Investigators have noted the great frequency with which the desire to be white recurs in dreams and delusional states of hospitalized Negroes. Such patients believe that they are really white, but that their skin is dirty, dyed, or painted. Some even think that they have eaten foods that have caused their skin to darken. Other investigators have found that Negroes' self esteem may be greatly impaired as a result of such feelings, and that accompanying self hatred may be generalized to hatred for the entire Negro race. Such feelings do not seem to be limited to psychotic patients. Among normal groups, one study has shown that 3 out of 5 Negroes feel that black is the worst color to be. Among Negro college students, light skinned Negroes are considered more attractive. On the broad social level, Negroes with lighter skin have more education and hold jobs with higher status. In, in studies of adults, it is, of course, difficult to rule out the impact that the attitudes and treatment received from whites have had on Negro feelings toward self. It would also be a mistake to attribute all these various findings to simple assimilation of white attitudes. Somewhat more convincing with regard to our initial supposition are studies of elementary and preschool children. Even in the second grade, Negro children will prefer white children as friends. The Clarks have found that 3-year-old Negro children will notably prefer a white doll to a brown one, feeling the white doll is nicer, looks better, and has a better color. Further studies show that preschool nursery children will fail to identify themselves as Negro and will prefer to see themselves as white. The supposition that attitudes toward color generalize to attitudes toward people, and in this case, working toward the detriment of the Negro, gains further credence when one peruses various accounts of experiences in non Western cultures. The classic case is the capitulation of the Aztec civilization to Cortez and his small band of soldiers, an event some have thought to be the result of the Aztec association of whiteness with divinity. There are also the accounts of Captain James Cook's explorations in New Zealand, where he found that the more prestigious natives of the tribes were of a whiter case. Melville's description of the Marquesan Islanders is also apropos. Upon the arrival of the first white woman to the island, the islanders gaze in mute admiration at so unusual a prodigy and seemed inclined to regard her as some new divinity. The Marquesan women were also known to take great pains to whiten their skin in order to appear more beautiful. In India, Varna, the word for caste, originally meant color, while the color of the highest caste, the Brahmins, is white. The color associated with the Sudras, the lowest caste, is black. Although hardly conclusive, the above evidence suggests that whenever there are distinctively different color lines within a society, excuse me for this interruption. Okay, I'm back. Although hardly conclusive, I believe this is where I left off. After talking about the Brahmins being white and the Sudras, the lowest case, being black. Although hardly conclusive, the above evidence suggests that whenever there are distinctively different color lines within a society, there will be a pronounced tendency toward strife between the light and the dark. Further, alterations in laws or social structure, loosening of economic biases, and reduction of prejudice within any period of time will not serve as a trans-historical panacea. Rather, each new generation may have to learn anew the irrational basis of their antipathy, while race prejudice may to some extent be learned. Persons may also have to be taught not to be prejudiced. The often noted tendency for the dark-skinned to feel inferior may have an initial basis in color symbolism. Such feelings may serve to reinforce exploitation by the lighter-skinned, and thus diminish further the self-esteem of the dark. Again, an extended process of relearning may be entailed. Skin color in the world of everyday relations. A person tends to categorize other people on the basis of overt physical differences and to invest these categories with certain connotative meanings. When such investments take place on a denotative level, they are often called stereotypes. The common tendencies to perceive Negroes as lazy, they might cut me off for this, but this is what the book is saying. Jews as mercenary and Japanese as shy have received keen attention in as much as they exemplify indiscriminate models of thinking. There are also culturally shared stereotypes based on differences in clothing, club or group affiliations, and so on. People feel they know something about a person because he wears the uniform of a policeman or a soldier. The personalities of those affiliated with extreme right versus left wing political groups are commonly supposed to differ. Such stereotypes may have subtle but far reaching influences on human relations. They tend to dull one's sensitivities to the truly individual qualities of the single other. Encountering another, people typically search for information that will allow them to act adaptively toward him. Once it has been found that the person can be stereotyped, the search for and sensitivity to more refined facts concerning the person may be sharply reduced. Thus, color-based categorization and resulting stereotyping can deter what may be termed personalistic encounters. In addition to reducing sensitivity, Categorization also promotes object relations as opposed to person-centered relations. Rather than being engaged as a unique individual, the person who is marked as an exemplar of a group becomes an object. He will be identified first of all as Chinese or Negro. The difficulties in breaking through such categorizations to engage the man are considerable. In, in Buber's terms, the person who is classified on the basis of skin color becomes an it rather than a thou. For the person who may potentially be discriminated against because of his skin color, additional liabilities may accrue. Being treated as a member of a category rather than as an individual, one tends to behave in ways that are consistent with the assigned category. If the person feels that others expect him difficulty to act diffidently, for example, the path of least resistance is to act in the prescribed manner. In this case, stereotyping may tend to reinforce itself. In addition, unlike a uniform or group affiliation, skin color cannot be donned or doffed as the situation may demand. The person is thus placed at an important disadvantage because he must always present to others information about his racial background. So true. In essence, he is disadvantaged with regard to information control in the situation. Lest this be taken lightly, one might envision a typical member of white society living out his public life with the words middle class suburbanite, less than a high school education, or I was 4F emblazoned on his forehead. As a result of this uncontrolled presentation of information, the person is also forced to attend to its consequences. At the outset of relationships with persons of another racial grouping, he will be forced to seek cues as to the other's assessment of him. In essence, the internal logic might go, he sees I am Negro. Then, what does he think of Negroes? Once the search for cues has commenced, he is forced into an almost schizoid position. He must discriminate between reactions to his skin color as opposed to those relevant to him as a person. He cannot he cannot be certain, in effect, whether a warm smile or a cold remark is a reaction to his racial category or to his more individual person. Persons with wealth or power are faced with parallel problems. They cannot be certain whether their acceptance by another is personal or prompted by their position in life. Such persons are at an advantage, however, in that they often have greater control over the information available to others. In a society where race prejudice exists, the above problems are only exacerbated. In such cases, the person carries with him a constant reminder of his limitations, disadvantages, and diminished opportunities. These constant reminders serve only to support the low self-esteem syndrome referred to above. The description of some Negroes as being color struck may be quite apt. For the strong at heart, skin color may produce overcompensation. Feeling others' discrimination, the Negro may strive all the harder to achieve or gain power. But the seeking of power, whether economic or otherwise, on strictly retaliatory grounds may have unfortunate consequences within a society. Moreover, skin color serves as an easy scapegoat for the person who tries and fails. Rather than asking rational questions calculated to overcome past errors, the person may simply blame his failure on his skin color and ask no further questions. In all too many cases, however, the person's skin color may simply inform him that trying itself is fruitless. The hurdles of racial equality may be high ones, indeed, and great preparations may be needed for the jump. The most direct mode of offsetting many of these problems may reside in programs of learning. Increased knowledge concerning persons of other races should serve to ameliorate many of the above conditions. In particular, knowledge of basic similarities is at a premium. Such similarities are most likely to be manifested prior to intensive subgroup acculturation, and thus the period of childhood is most strongly implicated as a teaching context. Discrimination learning in the area of color symbolism may also play an important role. Both this type of training as well as training in breaking down stereotypes work against the inertia of imprecise thinking. The ultimate solution may reside in the domain of racial homogenization. Well, I just finished The Significance of Skin Color in Human Relations by Kenneth J. Gergen, and I will be moving on to Hiroshi Wagatsuma, The Social Perception of Skin Color in Japan. So, I thank you for hanging in there with me, even with the interruptions that I've had and everything. I really do appreciate it, and I am glad that you are here. I hope that you will like, share, and subscribe. I just basically like sharing the book and reading it to you, the audience, because, like I've said so many times, I don't think I would have got through or read this book by myself, by myself. Some of the words are, you can tell they're from, the 60s, some of the vernacular used even in the reading. And some of the words, I try to pronounce, even I am not, familiar with some of them, just some of them. But anyway, no one's perfect. And not to mention, I want to say something about this picture I chose. It says, "Do you know the move disaster that took place May 13th, 1985? It had its anniversary last month. And I urge you to go and do more research on this if you didn't already know about it. I've asked several people, some colleagues of mine, did they know about it? And the colleague that I asked was really in shock. He was like, "No, I didn't know about that." This happened in 1985, right here in this country. Nevertheless, my people, I also hope that you enjoy Juneteenth, and we have to keep this for ourselves. Some of us have these other views about it, that we should be inclusive. Everybody wants us to be inclusive with everything, but nobody wants to be inclusive with us. But anyway, I'm going to keep it lightweight. I wish you all peace, love, and light, and look forward to Hiroshi Wagatsuma's The Social Perception of Skin Color in Japan. I am TB Wahid. Black Living Room Talk. Peace, love, and light.